Hey, we're Aly and AJ.
And you're listening to Main Pod Girl.
Hey, welcome to Main Pod Girl, a podcast made by Popheads for Popheads. Every episode we'll be diving into all kinds of pop culture topics with some of our favorite artists and music commentators. I'm your host, AJ Marks. Today's special guests were staples on my iPod Nano. Graduating from Disney darlings to Popheads darlings, these sisters have been releasing music for nearly 20 years. They're the singer-songwriters behind hits such as Potential Breakup Song, Rush, and Like Whoa. They have several beloved albums, including this year's record, With Love From. Their acting careers span classics such as Easy A, Steven Universe, Phil of the Future, and The Goldbergs. And they just released their new holiday EP, Lonesome Dove. I'm talking about none other than our two newest Main Pod girls, Aly and AJ. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, AJ.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start off with what everyone's been listening to. Who wants to go first?
You go first and then come around to us.
Go first, AJ.
Thank you, AJ. I've been listening to a lot of John Denver, actually. I've been getting really into John Denver recently. And funny enough, also Faith Evans, the one who sings Love Like This. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Faith Evans, Keep the Faith, that album.
That's beautiful. That really speaks to me, actually. We grew up listening to Faith Evans. You know, our parents never listened to John Denver in the house, and I think that was an indication whether or not it was going to follow Aly and I or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like once you've kind of invested and given time to music as a child, you then take it with you, and John Denver was not one of those artists. But lately, I've been listening to, well, because it's Christmas, I always am listening to Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. So those are my top two right now. But when it comes to like secular pop music, I'm listening to like a lot of Sheryl Crow lately, especially in the car when I'm on like little drives to San Ynez or Los Olivos or wherever it might be.
Have you heard Sheryl Crow's song with Colby Calais?
It's so good.
So good.
And also kind of a perfect like mashup.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Aly and I are lately really inspired by her songwriting, and we've just started writing another album, and she's kind of been like a shining star on the board of like
references. Yeah,
exactly.
She's on the vision board. I love that.
She's on
the vision board. For me, I've been listening to the latest Feist record, and I'm kind of always listening to War on Drugs. I was listening to like a live record that just like popped up on my phone the other day, and it was actually really nice to listen to like a live version of them singing the songs, you know, because like most of the time I don't listen to live records. I'm usually listening to like the album, you know, and then if I want to see them live, I go and see them in concert. But I would say those two right now. And then like, you know, just putting on like Christmas Station, you know, listening to some like old school classics. We're kind of more into like the old school.
I could tell by the new holiday EP.
Oh, nice.
It feels more like chestnuts roasting on an open fire kind of vibe.
Totally. And those were the records that we really loved and listened to growing up. So I think we wanted to kind of do that version for this EP. And you know, I do feel like classic Christmas music is so timeless because you can listen to it 50, 60 years later and it still feels like it just works. I'm not as much into the like the trendy of the moment Christmas music, although there's, I'm sure, a couple songs that make me think of my childhood because they probably came out, you know, in the early 2000s. But yeah, that was definitely an intention for us.
Let's dive into that a little bit. You do have a Christmas album from way back when. What was the difference in approach with making this record, with this EP?
Well, I think for us, the biggest difference is production changed immensely since that record came out. I think that album came out in like 2006 or 2007, and we haven't released any holiday music since. So it was kind of like Aly and I re-entering the music space in the Christmas side of things, but as adults. And I don't think we've had that opportunity yet. Whereas, you know, we've put out records since Into the Rush and Insomniatic now. So we have records like A Touch of the Beat and With Love From and some of the EPs that kind of declare that Aly and I have now, you know, our taste has changed. We're in our 30s now. It's a totally different thing when we released music at 16. And I think this was the first time where our holiday music got that same moment. You know, it's short and sweet. It's only 3 songs, but even to have an opportunity to kind of recreate Greatest Time of Year was really special for Aly and I, because that song is super bombastic. Like, it's fun, and I know people love it, and I love it as well. But when we wrote it, Aly and I were teenagers, and it was like, how wild can we make the production? It's like pop rock. It's really fast. And it's a cute song, but we were like, I actually think if you strip this song back, like the bones of it as a writer it's really strong, but I think it needs to be told in a different light. And so I feel like Aly and I had like our opportunity to make an adult holiday album, which is something we've wanted to do for a long time.
It works so well stripped back. Greatest Time of Year is actually one of my favorite, like maybe top 10 Christmas songs. I love that you were able to evolve that song so well into your new style. So anyone who hadn't heard that song previously, it doesn't sound like a re-recording or transformation. It just sounds like you wrote the song.
Like it should have always been that way.
Exactly.
We were nervous, I think, a little bit about like turning that song inside out because all we could hear in our mind was the original. And thankfully our producer Eve was like, no. He's like, this is totally doable. He was like, you slow it down. Like we do like a little bit of like a shuffle with the drum beat. And then, you know, getting obviously the musicians in the room really helped, which we used our touring band to cut all of the music, which was really cool. So I feel like, you know, at the end of the day, we got exactly what we were looking for, but we almost didn't have the faith, you know, in being able to transform that song because all we heard it as was the original, which is so wildly different from what we ended up doing. So I'm glad that it translated. And I do feel like a lot of the fans ended up really liking what we did with it, which is great because that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, it's so true.
When it comes to potential breakup song and the re-recording of that, I love the relationship y'all have with your previous work and how it feels like you respect it and you honor it in that way, whereas like a lot of things you release as like teenagers, I know that I have some music released as a teenager that like I'm embarrassed of, you know.
Sure.
And it takes time to come around and then be like, wow, you know, that is great and I do love that. When you first re-recorded the first song, was there always like a plan to then like, oh, and we could do this song and take that song over to the new project, or was it more just like kind of the moment you write Lonesome Dove and you were like, well, let's tack on this too? Or,
you know, it's funny because Potential Breakup Song kind of led the pack for the re-records, and we've only released a few of them, like just singles, but Potential had such a moment on TikTok. We were like, let's restore the song and bring it back. And again, release it as the pop version of what we would do now. And so that song, we didn't really in our minds at that moment have in mind like the idea that we were going to release a bunch of old material again. But I do think because of Potential Breakup Song, it led the way for Greatest Time of Year, because we know that that song has had a big hand in people's lives during the holidays. And we were like, it'd be nice to get a new version out there, something that we really respect and believe in now, as much as we love our old stuff. And it's really sweet that you would notice that, because there is a respect and a reverence that we have for our old material. It's what got us here. Like, I love a lot of that music. Division, Flattery, Closure. Like, there are a lot of songs where I'm like, oh, wow, this is really solid songwriting. And I think Aly and I, ever since we were young, have kind of, it's shown me that we were always doing what we were supposed to be doing, which is really reassuring. But at the same time, you know, when it comes to the production and the instrumentation and how you want things mixed and mastered and how you want to sing a certain vocal, that all changes wildly as time goes on. So it's nice to give songs kind of a new outfit.
And also, before we get into everything else, because I want to talk about the whole Aly and AJ timeline after this, but I have this weird conspiracy theory that I need a little confirmation on. In all of your album artwork and almost all of your single artwork, Aly is on the left, AJ is on the right, which means it's always Aly and AJ. Is that intentional branding or just like a wild coincidence?
No, it kind of is. It is intentional, weirdly. Like, the funny thing is that I'm stage right all the time, like how you would read it from the audience. And I think that feels very natural. And it would be so weird if I was performing on the left side. That would feel like, icky. So yeah, I do think that's intentional. Whether we like started with that idea from the beginning and have just been rolling with it ever since, but now that is kind of intentional. Don't you feel like, Age?
No, very much so. Like, even in interviews, we stand like in a certain order, because I know that people confuse us. And I think mentally, if you read from left to right and it's the order of the band, it just helps people's brains wrap around the fact that like, oh, that's Aly, that's AJ. And so it ends up being just what we do all the time. And now it's a habit, but yes, it started intentional.
Okay, cool. All right. Because I was like, this is very, very consistent. When I was performing in a band, when the guitarist and bassist would switch because of where the amps were and everything, I remember just being so thrown off, like performing on stage. Like, I was like, this isn't right. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. No. Yeah, I agree.
I couldn't imagine, now that we've toured as much as we have, and we're both positioned in certain spots, I couldn't imagine switching. I very good observation. I love that you noticed that. And the conspiracy is hopefully solved for you.
Yes, now everyone will know. So you have an extended career to go through. I want to start with the comeback records. First of all, 10 Years is its own project. Sanctuary is its own project. But then you have both EPs and 2 other songs in one big project with We Don't Stop.
Yeah.
In your minds, is that the comeback record or more like a cap on the years spent transitioning back into the project?
That's interesting. It's so funny when you release music and you believe in stuff, you just put it out and hope that everyone else believes in it too. But you don't always think about it as, okay, this marks this chapter of my life. This marks this chapter. But honestly, now that I'm sitting here thinking about this question, I'm like, I kind of think what you said last, which is it caps kind of that chapter of what Aly and I were doing then, but it doesn't scream that this is the comeback. Like, to me, A Touch of the Beat really screams like this is the moment back, because it was the first full-length album in 15 years.
Yeah.
And I really think at that point we had found our sound. I love We Don't Stop, and I think that the combination of those 2 EPs are really strong, but I think it was a little bit of a different era for our music. And I kind of think it was like our bridge to A Touch of the Beat and getting back to where we are now. And Touch of the Beat to me is like the beginning of like where we are now as adults and the records we're putting out now.
I had a question also about how you abbreviate A Touch of the Beat. So that works for me. I had a whole question about that because I was like, how do you just like reference that in passing with each other?
Yeah, that's how we shorten it. But when we were promoting the album, we were really intentional when we were doing interviews and press to call it A Touch of the Beat, gets you up on your feet, gets you out and into the sun, because we wanted to make sure that people knew, like, we're here to mention the full album. We're not ashamed that it's as long as it is. Like, we want people to remember it as that. Now that some time's passed and we're a little bit looser about it, we just call it Touch of the Beat. But people were on board with the full title, and people gave it its respect. So
a little bit of like Fiona Apple, you know?
It was Fiona move. Yeah, not on purpose. It was a lyric that Aly had mentioned when we were literally outside making the record, having lunch. We were like, what are we going to call this album? And Aly pulled out that lyric. We were working on Don't Need Nothing at the time, which is what the lyric is from that song. And I was like, that's brilliant. And she was like, it's long as hell. And I was like, yeah, but it really feels like this album. So we went with it, and the team believed in it, and we just went from there.
It evokes like an image, right? Because the John Denver song that I really love right now is Sunshine on My Shoulders. And that just is so, I don't know, descriptive in a way where you can feel it. You're like, okay, well, you have to have your shoulders exposed, and you also have to be in the sunlight. And then you just think about all the times that you've been there and done that, and you're like, yes. So it's like A Touch of the Beat. You can just like imagine kind of stepping out on the floor, like that first moment is the thing that I always get from that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it's our version of Sunshine on My Shoulders. It's sweet.
What were the moments from 2017 to now that feel like big milestones for getting back into this project?
I think the first was like truly making that EP and just kind of diving into making music again after being away from the industry. I think that was definitely the first like leap of faith. And that was because of the collaborations that we had with Ryan Spraker and Jamie Sirota, who were brought to us through Mike Elizondo, who was a dear friend and executive produced 10 Years. So I think that was like the first thing. And then I think from there, it was playing Lollapalooza. That was like a huge moment for us as a band. We'd never played a festival, and we had this incredible turnout, and we really didn't know how it would go. And the promoter just, believed in us, thankfully. And then from there, it was really reigniting the touring. That was a big one for us, was getting back out on the road again, finding Eve as our producer and making these 2 records with him pretty much back to back. That was a big one. I don't know, AJ, what do you think? Is there anything else I'm kind of missing?
Since 2017, there's been like a lot. For me, playing the Ryman on my birthday last year for the With Love From tour was absolutely epic. Like, I'll never forget that. Playing the Greek this year, selling out the Greek in LA. I mean, we went from playing the Terragram in 2017 for 2 nights to then playing, I think, the Fonda, and then the Wiltern, and then straight to Greek, which was really an epic evolution for the LA shows, because, we were born and raised here. We have a really big following here, but to go from those kind of theaters to then straight to the Greek is a big deal. So that sums up kind of where our career is at right now, which is really encouraging and feels really good. So the goal, is that we can keep touring and stay consistent every year, playing festivals and live shows. And hopefully, in a few years, we're playing the Bowl. And I think that's realistic because of how we've kind of soldiered on with these live shows. But yeah, the venues are what kind of, to me, mark the success of the live shows because they're constantly growing. They're constantly getting bigger. More people are showing up every year. So every year kind of becomes a blur, but you can always track how big the venues were that you played that year. And that kind of marks like, all right, this is actually growing, which is really neat to see as a band.
That's actually such a good point because I think like songs come and they go and there are always different metrics as we progress into the streaming era. Like you can look at different numbers and read the same thing a million different ways, but people coming out to the show, turn out for that, I feel like that's pretty solid,
Yeah, that's an indication that like people are listening. I mean, it's interesting, there's bands out there that have crazy high streaming numbers that don't really tour very well. It's really interesting. Just because you stream well does not mean you tour well. Just because you tour well does not mean you stream well. So they're kind of their own thing. And I think the one thing that I'm really grateful for is that we know kind of what our base room is when it comes to playing shows. And we know we can kind of always play X size room. And it just will take putting out more and more records to grow those rooms in size. But it doesn't really have anything to do, thankfully, with like going viral or having some song that has like 100 million streams on Spotify. I think it's more about the fans that hear word of mouth, start to see a show, and then they're hooked and they want to keep coming back for more. So that has been, I think, a big goal of ours when it comes to the like arc of Aly and AJ as a band and wanting to stick around for a long time. I mean, we really do like being on the road. We really enjoy it. And that's, I think, helpful when you actually like touring because it's not for everybody. But I think, us having started it when we were so young is part of why we really enjoy it. And the fact that like we're together, so we're not doing it alone.
That's a sweet answer. You do a lot of things together, but roles in the band, what are the biggest distinctions between you two other than being on the left and the right?
It's funny. We both are kind of the type of people that want to be in control of many things, and we both allow that for each other. We're both Aries. We both like our type A personalities.
I'm also an Aries.
We both kind of have to be in charge of multiple elements of our career, which I think is great because to have two people doing that is in some ways better than one. Other times it's kind of like, okay, we need to like delegate who's handling what. Aly is like super heavy handed in the merch side of things. I'm part of all the approval process and I get in the weeds on the final deck, but Aly is like basically from the start, like coming up with inspiration for each deck, whether it's like a February Valentine's Day set of merch or we're releasing holiday merch or Black Friday or whatever it might be. Aly is really heavy handed in the creative aspect of that. But really, besides that, everything is like Aly and I are both kind of like musical director brains when it comes to like curating the show. And like we do a lot together, which most people would think would cause a lot of strife, but it actually ends up working. We're kind of like two heads that work on one body. It's insane.
Moving into the newest album, With Love From, this is like a lot more like folkier, kind of a little bit more country leaning. Did you go into this album wanting to take a new approach, or did it kind of slowly creep in during the writing process? Or was there like a specific song that you loved and then built the whole record around?
If I'm thinking going back to the songs and how they all kind of like started to form, I feel like Blue Dress and Open to Something were very early on in the writing. Right, Age?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So I feel like those songs helped kind of craft the record. I don't think there was like a specific choice of like, let's make this slightly more earthy in its sounds and a little bit less synth and make it a little more like folky Americana leaning, even though it still feels very much in line with the touch of the beat. But I think that those songs helped us kind of start a blueprint for the record. And then the last song that came out of the album in terms of writing was Way of Nature, Way of Grace. That was the last song that we wrote before we got in the studio. And that was, I want to say, written only like maybe 6 weeks before we started recording, something like that, maybe even a little less, a month.
Yeah.
So, we didn't actually end up writing that many songs for With Love From. Like we didn't have that many other songs that kind of ended up getting booted off the record. The ones that we loved and we enjoyed were the ones that went on the album. And it was a very focused writing process. Whereas with A Touch of the Beat, we had many other songs that we ended up discarding and not putting on the album, and then some that ended up going on the deluxe. But when it came to With Love From, we were in like such a good writing zone. I think part of that was because of coming off the road, that the songs that we were writing, we ended up knowing that should go on the record, that should go on the record. And it was just a very consistent writing process for us. So there weren't a bunch of songs that were just waiting in the wings that had been discarded.
Do you feel like maybe coming off of the road and then going into the writing of this album was maybe the reason that it was a little bit more, I want to say, like instrument based?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a certain way that we play our songs live that kind of, it breathes a new life into it than when you just track a record. Like, it tells you, the songs will kind of show you how they're supposed to sound when you get in a room with band members. And I feel like when we went on the Touch of the Beat tour, we learned a lot from those songs and how they translated live. And I do think it inspired With Love From to be a little more, I mean, all the records we make are instrumental, but like, I do think it was like, okay, let's go a little less Sam. Not try to lean away from pop because it's still pop songwriting at its core. But I do think some of the folk inspiration and Americana inspiration came from playing these shows live. And we played like 78 shows the year before With Love From came out. So I think that could somehow just brought itself into the live recordings process, and it changed the genre style a little bit.
Yeah. And I think also the song With Love From, we ended up actually going into the studio and doing like a revision on the song after it had been already recorded, because we went out and started playing it a little bit differently. Like the chorus just felt less relaxed and laid back. And our guitarist Connor was playing some just beefier parts on the guitar that we hadn't had in the recording. So we literally had him come in and add some guitar on it. And then we ended up recutting our chorus vocals, which was like, our producer was like, the song's supposed to come out in like 3 weeks. Why are we doing this? But he ended up understanding ultimately what we were after. And I'm so glad that we did re-record it, because the vocal performances from the original to what they are now are very different.
Very different. That was Aly. We were on the road playing it over and over. And she was like, I don't think the way this song is translating live, this seems like the right way. And the way we've recorded it doesn't seem like the song's found itself yet.
Yeah, I still remember that restaurant. What was it? Like we had that really... Like It was like a delicious omelet, and like it was like a bookstore / restaurant. Do you remember that?
I remember this. And you were like, I think we need to re-record the vocals. And I was like, are you sure? What? Like, I was not on the same page at first. Like, I didn't disagree, but I was like, wow, that didn't enter my mind. And then when I listened, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, this doesn't fit the energy of how we're exuding these lyrics live. We need to match that in the recording. That's why I think it's so smart to play stuff live first, because once you discover it, you're like, okay, now I know how to record this.
Yeah.
It's those creative swings and those creative risks that give you the most reward, right?
True.
Yeah, totally.
Talking about the writing process and going back to the Christmas EP, so Lonesome Dove, that song, when did you write it? Like, do people write Christmas songs in the summer and then like release them by late fall, or do you write them when you're in like the holiday mood and then release it the next year?
I mean, you can do it any way you want. If you want to wait for a year and you've got Christmas tunes lined up and you didn't want to record them, then you wait a year. But Aly and I wrote that song in like June and recorded it in July. So it was a very quick turnaround, and we just decided, let's make the Christmas EP mid-year and have it ready to go for November. And that's how we plan to do it. I think what we want to do, I mean, we haven't committed to this fully yet, but I'm like, we could release a Christmas song once a year and just have it ready to go every year. It's one song, and Aly and I are such quick writers. Like, I actually think it would be really fun. And then eventually you've like gathered, 10 songs for an album and you put them all out on one vinyl. But Lonesome Dove was a June creation.
I love that idea. I was thinking about that because like Ariana Grande kind of does that. She like always has some sort of different Christmas project every year, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I would love the idea of like one Christmas song a year, and then it's like slowly kind of added onto the EP. So the EP grows and then it becomes an album.
Yeah, I think it'd be cute.
Yeah.
10 to 12 original songs that are holiday related is extremely hard to write. It's much harder than writing non-holiday music. I mean, it's because it's got to be so focused in its genre and its sound and its lyrics and its content. Whereas when you're writing for your record, it's like, there's a little bit more of creative freedom. When it's holiday, you're really staying in that box. It's got to be a holiday song. So I think it'd be nice to space it out. And, that's why the 3 songs felt really good, and the cover in there. And maybe we would do some more covers, but it's fun. It's really fun to get back into the holiday spirit for our music. I've missed it.
Was it the same for Greatest Time of Year?
Yeah. We recorded that whole album, I think, in June of 2006. I remember because we were like, this makes no sense. And we had to like get ourselves in the holiday spirit because we knew we wanted a holiday album, but we were not in the winter time at all. And we were in California. So we were like, we're in the wrong time of year. We're in the wrong place for this. So we like put up a Christmas tree and like decorated the studio and like pretended it was the holidays.
Yeah.
I can imagine like listening to a bunch of Christmas music in June and just trying to force yourself to be like, yep, it's Christmas.
I know. I don't know. We got really into it. And it's funny because it is something that you have to like kind of force at first, but we knew we wanted to make a holiday record and that was our way to really get it done that year. And so we went for it, committed ourselves.
I have a little game for y'all. It's called Call DM Block. I'm going to give you 3 celebrities, and you're going to have to call one, DM one, and block one. Not for real, just like hypothetically.
Okay.
So this time, our theme is people in bands with their siblings.
Okay.
First one is Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, Alana Haim of Haim, and Colin Greenwood, the bassist of Radiohead.
Oh my.
Wow.
I think I'd have to call the Wilsons, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
DM Colin Greenwood. Because I feel like those guys would be reachable on DM anyway. It's Radiohead. They're current. And I think kill Haim.
You don't have to kill them, you just block them.
Not kill
them. That's funny.
That's great.
Well, that's the version of kill would be block. Only because I didn't grow up with Haim, so they would be the last one, which is the block.
Yeah. What about you, Aly?
Right. I would say I love the Beach Boys, but I also think there's a lot of darkness around that band. Like there's some sad shit that happened around that band. And I don't know. I just think like, I might block it. Even though I love their music. Yeah. And then I think I would call Greenwood and I DM Haim.
Okay.
Just because I feel like if I met them and they were like terrible people, I would be so let down. So I'd rather just not even know. Do you know what I mean?
No,
about Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're contentious. There's some stuff online about them that is pretty heavy that I'm like, ooh, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't need to meet them. I can just enjoy their music.
Okay. I respect that. I love that we went a little different and that we took this so seriously and like really dove in.
We did.
I appreciate that too. I really like when people take these games seriously. Okay, so I have another game called Song Superlatives. So just like in high school yearbooks where the graduating class votes for their peers for a number of different categories like best dressed, most likely to become president, I want to give you a chance to give the songs on your new album their own superlatives. But unlike high school, you can give multiple superlatives to a song.
Okay.
The first one is most changed. So the song that you think changed the most from inception of the writing to the final production.
Slow Dancing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so right, Aly.
That demo is wild to listen to now. Yeah, that's a huge one.
You beat me to it.
Wild in what way?
Just the production, the lyrics. I mean, the only thing that stayed the same technically in the song was the melody of the chorus, but it was just so different in terms of the tempo and everything. We did a lot of rewriting lyrics on that song in general. So yeah, they're pretty different.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I don't even know which one compares to that. I mean, that one became like a whole other song. It was like this upbeat pop kind of 80s synth. Didn't even sound like where it is now. Almost a different genre.
The next one is best aesthetic. So this is like in terms of the music video, the single artwork.
I would say Pretty Places.
I'd say Don't Need Nothing.
Yeah. I think those two from that album probably are the most defined and feel the most like centered and realized and grounded in what they are.
Yeah.
And then honestly, I think we found it even more on the next album. Like I think With Love From, I would say Pretty Places from Touch of the Beat, and I would say With Love From as a single from With Love From.
I'd agree. I'd say With Love From With Love From. Yeah. I think the music videos and the imagery and the wardrobe and everything from With Love From is a lot more focused in its choices than A Touch of the Beat.
The next one is Cutest Couple That Never Was. So this was like a song of yours that you wanted to make a collaboration or a song that you could make into a dream collab.
Talking in My Sleep, we were always like saying that song sounds like a 1975 song. So that would have been a good collab.
Yeah, it would have been.
That's what comes to my mind. Yeah.
I mean, they're problematic now, but yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that's true.
But their music's great.
Yeah, their music is good, and I think they're really good at their visuals.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. There have been very few songs where we felt like this is something we need to get someone on with us. Like Way of Nature, Way of Grace took a really natural turn in order to get to Joy and really felt right. But in general, we don't release songs or write songs thinking of features in mind.
I feel like also in like a band structure, it's harder to kind of operate in that mindset too, you know?
Yeah.
You already have both of you there, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have our vocals, and it's enough, you know. It doesn't mean that it's not nice to have someone add their flair, but what we're able to bring with the musicians we work with is like enough, which is kind of why I think we haven't done a bunch of collaborations in general in the past.
True.
Yeah. I feel like bringing in like a drummer or a guitarist for a guitar solo or something like that could totally work. I think Kesha did that a lot on one of her albums. She had like Patrick Carney and Strokes.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think, bringing a musician in is a good idea.
I do too. Yeah, I love that.
All right, the next one is most unique.
I think 6 months of staring into.
Yeah, I agreed with AJ on that. I was going to say 6 months staring into the sun.
Yeah, we said at the same time. I love it.
Yeah.
And then the last is the most likely to succeed. So this is a song that before it was released, you thought would hit the hardest.
Pretty Places.
Yeah, I kind of think so, which it still has done well, but it didn't do as well as like Slow Dancing, which I'm surprised Slow Dancing did better because it doesn't seem as obvious of a song. But I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always so fascinating to see how people interpret their own music and like how they think it's going to do, because it's usually never the same as the actual outcome.
Right.
True.
Sometimes you're sitting on gold and you just like absolutely know it, and sometimes you have like no idea and you were about to throw that song out and then you're like, whoa, everyone really responds to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true.
So also I have a question. What are your favorite acting roles that each of y'all have done?
I think maybe the movie that we made together is up there as one of my favorites, just because we have such good memories from it. It was very special.
Same. Not referring to cowbells, but Weep Away for now.
Okay.
Yeah, not referring to cowbells.
Yeah, I love that film. You know, we're kind of playing a version of ourselves in that indie. And I think it feels the most authentically like honest to who Aly and I are. If we were to say like, okay, make a scripted film that feels like you without it being a documentary. And then honestly, I would say, I mean, my time playing Lainey Lewis on the Goldbergs in school, it's because I was able to play that character for 10 years and it kind of carried my career for a long time. And I was able to make like lifelong friends out of that role because of the people that I was able to work with for months at a time. So I think that character is really just close to my heart and a character that I'll always cherish.
That's wild that it was 10 years. I didn't even realize it had been that long.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, my favorite moment actually, both of you were in it. It was Hellcats.
Oh.
So my two sisters, I love them so much. They're my favorite people in the world. They were a competitive cheerleader and a gymnast. So Hellcats, Make It or Break It, Bring It On, those were like huge in our house. And it was so fun to see y'all together on that show, especially because it's like, these are things that remind me of my sisters, you know? So
That's so
really
sweet. I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
it's a great show.
Thanks.
I need to rewatch it sometime. And then my last question is, what's something you did as a child that your parents still talk about?
I won a Hallmark card contest when I was 9, before I was even in the industry. And it was for a birthday card. And it was like, I don't know, like 20 kids were chosen all over the country for their artwork. And one of my drawings happened to be chosen. And we went on this like big family vacation to visit the Hallmark factory and Crayola factory. And my parents still talk about that. And it's very funny.
That's an iconic moment in our family history.
Yeah.
It was Aly's Hallmark career. I would have to say, not quite as cool, but I would have to say, and my dad talks about it every year around the holidays, I was the lead of this Christmas musical at church called Candy Cane Lane. And I played this character, Candy Cane Jane. And my mom picked out the outfit and my dad made the candy cane. So like he literally made it in our garage. It was like this giant candy cane stick that was like stuffed with glitter and like sparkled. And it was amazing. And that was my big prop on the show. And my dad to this day talks about me starring in that Christmas play, which is hilarious because I was like 9.
Is that like a popular play or was that like an original play?
No, it was original.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Candy Cane Jane. Oh, well, this has been amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's nice to meet another name twin as well.
Yes, same. I see you.
Thanks, Noah, for the theme music, and make sure to rate and review us wherever you're listening to this podcast right now.